Hey all, how you doing? All right, doing a quick little video here because as you sensed already, and as will become increasingly obvious as we go through the term, we're continually conducting research in the context of this course. Some of this research is to try to make the course itself better, to improve the educational experience for all of you. And sometimes the research is just like all research, to learn and to understand and to figure out how we can have a positive impact. And so as we do these research projects throughout the term, I want to use them as an opportunity to bring research to life for you. These are things you've experienced or seen playing out, and I want to kind of close the circle in the sense that, once you give us some data, thank you, but then I want to tell you a little bit about what that study's about, what we're thinking about, and, give you some of your data back and let you think about it, etc., and sort of involve you in that whole research process. And so this is maybe the beginning of closing one of those circles, and it's really around the welcome activity, which was, of course, the first activity we did in the class. And of course, the welcome activity, just on the face of it, but when we don't even think of research, really has two goals. One was to really honor the truth and reconciliation process by bringing some Indigenous ways of knowing and being into the classroom and sharing them with you all. And then specifically, we shared, a ritual that Indigenous communities use when they're greeting one another for the first time, and that notion of first meeting as humans, sharing stories before getting down to business. So partly we want you to kind of experience that, and we wanted to harness that, to be quite honest, to help build community at UTSC, and specifically to help welcome you, our newest students, onto our campus, to our community, and to make you feel welcome. And so that was those were the two goals, sharing some of the Indigenous ways of knowing and being, but you also harnessing those to try to enhance your feeling of belonging and your social well-being on campus. And so this social well-being is going to be a theme throughout the term as we go through. And so as you went through the process, we also asked you, if you wouldn't mind, to fill out some questionnaires. And so I did that for a couple of reasons. One is those questionnaires will become relevant all through the term when we talk about different research projects. And you'll see how we can use those questionnaires to ask interesting research questions. And I'll give you one example of that now. But I wanted you to experience them too. I wanted you to go through the process of filling out a questionnaire, and then to get on the other side, which is what we're going to do today. In fact, let's just start there. And so what we're going to do, if Ainsley has not already done so, we will do so very soon. We're going to release to those people. Remember when you did the survey, you had an option of whether you wanted to allow your data to be used for research, and whether you did or not, whether you wanted to see some of your data back. Well, those of you who asked to see some of your data back, we will be returning that data. And well, specifically, rather than we asked you to fill out 2 or 3 or 4 questionnaires. I'm going to talk to you about a couple of them, and then but there's one specifically, the Big 5 Personality Index, where we gave you your scores on those Big 5 variables. But of course, it's just a set of numbers, right? And so what I want to talk to you a little bit about is how to interpret that Big 5. And then we're going to talk about a couple of other questionnaires. And I'm going to kind of bring it together by showing you one of the questions we're asking in the context of the welcome activity. Okay, so a lot going on there. So let's go to Big 5 first of all. Let me get to a spot here. Where do we want to be? Let's just do Wikipedia. Big 5. That should, yeah, and you'll see Big 5 personality traits. Okay, so let me just put this on here, and here we have the Big 5 personality traits. And so these are the traits. So you can read this Wikipedia page to learn a whole lot more about the Big 5, including the history and et cetera, and they'll ask you to give them some money. That's up to you. Now, what you'll learn is that these are the 5 dimensions. And the idea of the Big 5, we're not going to really go into personality in detail in this course. That's going to be more Psych AO2. But The idea behind the Big Five personality index is that we can take any one of our personalities and kind of view it like it's composed of five different ingredients. Like a cake that has five different ingredients: salt, sugar, flour, water, eggs, something like that. But then the question is, how much of each of those ingredients is present? And the claim is we can think of your personality as some combination of these five. Now, what are these five? So this is a result of a lot of research that's gone on, and this seems to do a really good job of predicting people's behaviors in certain contexts when you break it down this way. So the first one, openness to experience, or to new experience. How open are you? Are you the kind of person that likes to stick with your ritualistic way of being and doing things the way you've always done it? That would be a low openness. Or are you the kind of person who likes to do new things and have new experiences and put yourself in new situations? And are you very open to new experiences, new people, new whatever? And so that's what this variable, and these all go to five being high on openness. So you can see here it's one of the domains that are used to describe blah, 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 blah. Openness involves 6 facets or dimensions: active imagination, aesthetic sensitivity, attentiveness to inner feelings, preference for variety, and adventurousness, that kind of thing. Okay, so now, how do you think of your numbers? Well, what people say is you want to look at the ones where you're particularly high or you're particularly low. Those are the more interesting numbers about you. So if you're up around 5 or down around 1, that kind of talks a little bit about your openness to experience. But if you're anywhere in between, it just kind of says that. If you're a 3, you're kind of somewhere average in the middle of openness. If you're a 4, you're a little more open, 2 a little less, etc. So not a lot much more to say than that. Now these other ones, by the way, the next one, conscientiousness. This is a hugely powerful predictor. It's your number one predictor of how you will do in university. And it refers to the facts. Do you do things like pay attention to deadlines, start your assignments in time, work well and respectfully with other people? It's just, are you a conscientious person? Are you the kind of person that worries about the details and wants to do things right? Are you timely? Do you show up at meetings at the right times? That's what conscientious people do. So if your score is high on conscientiousness, good news. That correlates with high marks usually, and it's usually a good trait to have. If you're low on conscientiousness, that you're probably the kind of person that misses deadlines, doesn't get stuff handed in, maybe just has library books that are way overdue, that kind of thing. So that's another dimension. And so you can look at that and say, how high or low am I on that? So here it says, the trait of being responsible, careful, or diligent implies a desire to do a task well and to take obligations to others seriously. We all tend to like conscientious people. All right, so see where you are there. Next one, extroversion. Now you know extroversion pretty well, introversion, extroversion. So if you're a 1, you're more introverted, 2, you're more extroverted. And some people say, what is it that feeds your inner self? Okay, is it rest, relaxation? Do you like to recharge and reflect in a quiet, place? That's what introversion people like to do. So they value one-to-one friendships, they favor independence, they don't like to be the center of attention, etc. And they like deep experiences, whereas extroverts are more, they like stimulation, they feel energy from people. They like to share their ideas, they like large social networks, they thrive in teams and crowds, etc. And so sort of, your social dynamicness, the higher that is, the more extroverted you are, the lower, the more introverted. Nothing here is good or bad, okay? I mean, low conscientiousness, maybe you're a little bit of a pain in the butt to be around. but there's nothing really good or bad. It's just a description of your character to some extent. Agreeableness. Agreeableness is really how easy are you to get along with, generally speaking. So it says here, agreeable people are perceived as kind, sympathetic, cooperative, warm, honest, considerate. That's when viewed from the other side, you can be too agreeable. And some people who are too agreeable feel like others use them as doormats, that they're continually doing things for other people, but other people aren't doing things for them. So it's not the case that you want to be necessarily a 5 on agreeableness, but if you're a 1, you're probably hard to get along with, right? So So see where you are on agreeableness. And then neuroticism. So neuroticism is a fascinating variable, and it really is, associated with negative emotions. High scores on neuroticism are likely to experience feelings like anxiety, worry, fear, anger, frustration, envy, jealousy, pessimism, guilt, depressed mood. Could we think of any more negative emotions, right? It's really worry is the predominant thing we associate with neuroticism. So someone who's neurotic is continually worrying about things. They drive us crazy, right? Because they're often even worrying about things that never will happen, and that they really don't need to be worrying about, and yet they're all upset and worried about this kind of thing. So high and neurotic people, they're exhausting because they are so emotional, and often it's negative emotions that they're wrestling with all the time. Now, low on neuroticism is sort of the opposite. That's a very grounded, confident person who doesn't seem anxious, who will say people are comfortable in their own skin or whatnot, right? That would be low on neuroticism. Okay, so you have your 5 scores, and the claim is you can kind of think about those 5 scores, how they come together, and they kind of define you. Now, why is this relevant to research? Well, one of the questions we're curious about in the welcome activity, sort of how much did you like it? How much did you value it? So we asked you some questions about that. But let's stick with a question we are going to ask you down the line, which is, did you ever make an effort to meet somebody in the class beyond the welcome activity? Did you have a video chat? Did you go out for a coffee? Did you do anything? That's what we really hope, right? That's what we hope this activity produces is friendships, is social connection. And so we would like to know, did you socially connect? But we would also like to know, hey, did the personality characteristics of the student in any way tell us, who valued the activity more or less, and whether they went on to socially connect? So we can start to look at the data people gave us as a function of their personalities. And that can tell us a little bit about, which students were helping, but also if there's students that were not helping. Maybe students with certain personality structures are not enjoying this activity. And if we know that, maybe we can reshape the activity to be, better for them. Okay. And so we're looking at things like that, how the Big Five predicts the scores of the various other things we asked. All right. Cool. So that gives you a taste, and in fact, when we have some more thoroughly written up data, I will try to share that with everybody if we have it in time in the class, so that you can actually see the final product of some of this stuff. But I also wanted to tell you about 2 other things we mentioned, and I'm going to flip over here to a dialogue that I've been having with Adam over here in Slack. And Adam's been just looking at the data overall. And we decided for these 2 variables, we weren't going to send everybody's score to them, because really this is something I just want you thinking about at a higher level. But these will relate to some of the stuff you're going to hear about social connection through the course. And specifically, I'm going to suggest the following. You will hear at times during the course that the predictor of happiness and the number 1 predictor of mental health is something called social health. If you have a number of good friends that you care for and that care for you, that is hugely insulating in terms of dealing with stress in life. And we know the people who have that succeed, are happier, and have less health issues, both mental and physical. So, at one level, you just want to tell everybody, go make a bunch of friends. You'll be happier. All the research suggests it. Just go make friends. And yet if I say that to you all, you might say, yeah, but it's not that easy, man. It's not that easy. There's stuff in the way. And this is what I want to talk to you a little bit about, that stuff in the way. And because in order to sort of take on some challenge, and the challenge I'm taking on is thinking how I can help you all become more socially connected, because I know the benefits of that. So what are the things we have to fight against? Well, the biggest thing we have to fight against is social anxiety, and I'm going to mention that directly in a moment. But social anxiety, we know, we've done enough studying on social anxiety that we know that the driver of social anxiety, the reason so many students are scared to speak to one another in real time, is because of something called fear of negative evaluation. And there's a scale. That's one of the questionnaires you did to measure your level of fear of negative evaluation. And basically what that says is that a lot of people, they think if I go into that conversation, that person's not going to like me. It's not going to turn out well. They might even tell people how pathetic I was. It could hurt my reputation. I would rather not talk to that person than, risk the negative evaluation that could happen from it. And so fear of negative evaluation makes people anxious, makes them not want to talk to people. And that's a problem because the only way you're going to get better at talking to people is to talk to people, to get the practice. So we have to understand the fear of negative evaluation, and we have to see if we can get around it. And I'm going to suggest to you in a little while, we're going to introduce you to something called Talk Lab, which is our way of helping you get around that. But first, we wanted to just know, what is the fear of negative evaluation of the class? And we want to ask things like, does one's fear of negative evaluation predict, how well they do in an environment like Talk Lab, for example, when you see it. So we measured fear of negative evaluation, and the score for the class was 39.2 was your average, with a standard deviation of 10. So one of the things I want to use this to talk about is, what the heck does that mean, 39.2? Now, we know the range was 12 to 60. If you answered, lowest you could on every question, you'd get 12. If you did as high as you could, you'd get 60. And so now we know you guys are around a 40 out of 60. Okay. Is that good? Is that bad? How do you know? Psychologists use norms to answer that question. And what they mean by norms is they will look at some population of people and get a bunch of them to do that test. And they will get a sense of where a score normally is for a given group. And now we can start to kind of think a little better about how that score fits. So you'll notice for me right away, when my reaction is, ooh, it feels high, I'll look for norms, because we have to look for norms to anticipate that. I actually found a norm, but before we get to mine, it's not exactly the same, but this is something Adam gave. Now, you're probably not going to be able to read this very well. I'll pump it up a little bit, but this is the fear of negative evaluation B score. That's just the questionnaire we used. Obtained for clinical groups, and a community sample can be prepared with previous normative data. So in 1983, this dude reported a mean of 35.7, standard deviation of 8, with a general undergraduate sample. That's what you are, okay? And they're saying this is lower than clinical samples and higher than the non-anxious community sample. So they got a bunch of non-anxious people. So this is higher than those non-anxious people, but it's lower than the clinical sample. They're sort of in between. 35.7. You guys are at 39 point something. We'll look again in a second, which is about half a standard deviation above where Leary was. Okay, so more fear of negative evaluation. Now, is that just time? Is that 40 years later, an undergraduate population is more anxious? Now, is that significantly more anxious, like 35 versus 38? Is that a real difference? Has anxiety really increased? That's what we need to use stats for, to answer that question, to say, is that difference significant? Is it reliable? Is it something we should be excited about? And we haven't done the full stats on this yet. But there you are. You guys are there, and it is relatively high. In fact, this score is one thing, but I looked for a couple papers. This was a paper I found where they were reporting fear of negative evaluation scores. Let me pump that up a bit. And what they found was that for patients, their score was 46.91, but for non-anxious controls, it was 26.81. Okay, 26. Now we think of yours, 39.2. Well, you're a heck of a lot closer to the patients than the non-anxious controls, right? You are almost at the point of patients being admitted because they have social anxiety issues. So I say all this just to tell you the following. You are not alone. Your classmates feel this too. It's kind of ironic that two students who may choose to speak to one another are each so worried what the other one will think that they have trouble speaking to each other. Instead of just saying, hey, yeah, this is kind of tricky, let's just get through it together. There's this, no, let's not even try. Fear of negative evaluation is high. Okay. Now, I said that feeds social anxiety. You can directly look at social anxiety as well. And now we use the Brief scale. So they actually have a version of the scale we used in this study too. But the problem is this scale is the long version. And so the numbers are different. You see 49s and stuff. We use the Brief version of the scale. So we can't compare it to this. But first of all, where is the class? 10.29 is the average score. Standard deviation of 5. Okay. And now range 0 to 24. So this feels almost low, less than halfway through the scale. But again, what are the norms? What do we see from different populations? Now, this is going to just look like garbage to you. This is, how do you decide? So what Adam was looking for is there's a cutoff on this scale where they say if your score is more than this, then you're having significant social anxiety issues that are probably negatively impacting your life, and maybe you should be considering treatment to help you with those. By the way, there's great treatments for anxiety. Just thought I'd mention that. But at any rate, so what is that cutoff? What should you use for the number to tell people, okay, you might want to? And that's what this study was about, and it was looking at different cutoffs. And really, what I would ask you to look at is right from where my thing is here. Taken with study 1 results, a value of 9 appeared to provide the best balance between sensitivity and specificity. Don't worry about those, but just worry about the fact that in the field, they kind of think a 9 suggests real social anxiety out there, and you guys got a 10.29 on average. So the average student in our class is has an anxiety level that's above the cutoff that might be used to suggest treatment for some people. This is just a state of being. This is where things are with young people. I blame text messages that you just haven't had the practice with one-on-one interactions because you've used text so much instead. But for whatever reason, we know there's a lot of fear of negative evaluation, and we know there's a lot of social anxiety. And that makes it really hard for all of you guys to become socially connected in the way that will bring you health and happiness. And so this is a major, this is as I try to think of what role can I play as a professor to try to make all of your lives better. One role I've been thinking is I want to help in the social connection realm, if I can. And this is why. You now see the data, why you see it from your own data, from this class, from the students around you. And so it's good for us to know these. And now as we go through some of the things we're going to talk about in the rest of the term, we have this as background. Okay, so, sorry, I didn't mean to quite go on as long as I did there, but there you have a sense. And often, again, when we go through things in this term, you'll be asked at various times, hey, are you happy with us using your data for research or even whatever? Every time I do that, I'll create a video like this, kind of walking you through what we were up to, what we were thinking, and showing you some of the data, involving you in the process. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well. So let's leave it there. All right. Bye-bye.